Hi, my friends. Dennis Gebhardt here with Guru Village. Hope you're all doing well. Look, I wanted to take a minute today and kind of share some information with you. You know, since our industry is going through such a tremendous change, it's evolving, and I think many of us are trying to figure out how to cope with that. Some of us are trying to figure out how we got here. And one of my friends said to me, he said, well, Dennis, why don't you kind of tell the story? Because, you know, I've been around for a while, and give those of you who are interested a little bit of background in how we ended up where we are today, where we have deregulation happening in our industry all over the country, where we have product manufacturers that are now selling their product online with no problems with that. Salon owners and stylists trying to figure out, what am I going to do now? You know, shame on them for doing this to me. And in fact, we have to bear some responsibility for this as well. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time here, give you a little background on the industry and what I saw. Now, some of you watching this are probably going to go, oh no, that's not what was happening where I was. And, you know, things happen simultaneously. So it's possible that what was happening here on the West Coast of the United States may have not been happening on the East Coast of the United States. But I'll guarantee you that a lot of things work pretty simpler. You know, I want to take you back to 1960 to begin with. Now, some of you, you know, your parents were born in 1960. Your grandparents were born in 1960. And you're going, why is that important? Because 1960 is really when the revolution began in our industry. Up until then, it was really practiced as a craft. And even in the 50s, even though we considered ourselves kind of professionals, really didn't start to get that way until the 1960s. You know, think about it. Salons really didn't retail any product to speak of. Hairsprays, gels, that was about it. Barrettes and things of that sort. So it was really an industry in its infancy, if you will. And in the early part of 1960s, 61, you started seeing some professional manufacturers start to grow, they started doing business. And the way that they built their businesses is they would go around to the salons and talk to the hairdressers and say, look, here's my product, here's my shampoo, I want you to use it. If you like it, tell your clients about it. We'll sell it, we can sell it to your clients. And so they really were dependent upon the hairdresser in order to get validation for their product. And so that is how the whole thing began. Now, some of the people in our business didn't want to sell products, so they just focused on doing service. Shame on them, because they're in part what helped us get to where we are. But in any case, I call that the era of the introduction, the beginning, if you will. Not a lot of retail in the salons, mostly service that was focused on. Education was not really something that was big. We would learn from each other. We would go to a salon on Wednesday night and learn some there, go to another salon on Thursday night and learn some things there. So it was really more of a cottage business at that time. Not until the 1970s did it really start to, you saw growth. You saw more entrepreneurial companies begin to open their doors and start doing business. Education became part of the manufacturer's business because the manufacturers learned that hairdressers, if you could get them together in a group and you could educate them and give them some degree of education, they would probably be loyal to your product, because naturally the goal was to show them how the product was the star and not necessarily the hairdresser. And so more companies opened, more retail started to happen in salons, large educational events, manufacturers, these were all entrepreneurial manufacturers, began doing large educational events, large seminars and things of that sort. And they also at that time they wanted to find talented hairdressers, and they began to hire these folks away from the salon to come and do demonstration. You know, they would see you and they'd say, geez, you cut hair really good. Would you come and demonstrate how you cut hair? And that's where the guest artist, that whole title began in our industry. So it was an era of belonging. In other words, you know, I picked my tribe. So maybe I loved Redken, so I was part of the Redken tribe. Maybe I loved Sebastian, I was part of the Sebastian tribe. Maybe I loved Matrix, I was part of the Matrix tribe. Understand that there were not a lot of entrepreneurial companies. There were many. They were growing very fast, but they still were a handful of folks. Okay, and we're talking about professional-only companies, not about the large conglomerates, which were always focused to retail, and that was where they made a majority of their money. Okay, so in the 1970s, that's the way things were done. Remember, in the 70s, I'm sorry, I'm asking you to remember. Some of you may not. In the 1970s, there was a big focus on chemical services. Permanent waving was really big then. And so you had all kinds of people, manufacturers that were, you know, building and promoting their special permanent wave. They had perms that were extra special and all of that. So that was a big era for us in this industry. In the 1980s is when really things started to happen. There was additions of new companies and they started to grow very, very fast. And so what happened is then you had to set a difference between you and another company. And that's where the terminology point of difference came in. So new manufacturers would come out with a new brand and they would say, well, here's the point of difference on this brand and that brand. And now we started to start to isolate things, saying, well, here's why our brand works better than the other one. It was still focused on product primarily. There was a major push on retail. They had retailing classes to teach salon professionals how to retail. And even at that, some of us chose not to do that. We said, I'm an artist, I don't retail. And that's what put us to where we are today, because we chose not to build that secondary revenue stream called retail, if you will, or prescribing of professional product. And that's an unfortunate thing. But that's what manufacturers tried to do, to get us to do that. That was important. Educational events became larger. Remember, up until this time, we didn't have large seminars or large hair shows. Hair shows were relatively small. Educational classes were relatively small. But in the 1980s, they became very large. And because color was now starting to make another big impact in our industry, it had started in the late 70s. Now manufacturers, the European companies started coming in. People like Golwell and Framisi and all of those started bringing their products to the United States. And the push was really on hair color. There were large exclusive seminars that were done for us as salon professionals, and they started hiring talented artists. So at that point in time, you know, becoming a guest artist for a company was a great thing, because, you know, they wanted talented artists to demonstrate their product. And by the talented artists, you know, who had great skills using the product, the illusion is that the magic was in the product and not in the artist who had the skills to make that product work. You know, and so we started focusing about how important the product was more than our skill set. And that is what has continued. So in the 1980s, a lot of chemical services were being done. It was crazy, crazy time for our industry. And we were growing. Education was in high demand, you know, and so these seminars were done, and local education was being done. But then the 1990s came around, and 1990s was really when a lot of things changed in our business. A couple things happened in the 1990s. First of all, 1993 was the first time one of the independent entrepreneurial businesses, big brands, well known in our industry, they sold out. They sold to a large global conglomerate, which was primarily retail. Now, this company had for years in Europe, one of their behaviors was to not go out and compete against their competition, but to buy their competition. So they would go out, they would find a talented hairdresser, and they would literally open a salon for them, so long as they used their brand. And their biggest money, their biggest revenue came from the retail. And it always did, and it still does today. So they purchased this major brand, and we were all concerned about what was going to happen. But they made promises. They said, no, 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 you will become the shining jewel in our crown, and we will not, we will still continue to let you to be a professional only company. But once that happened, it really kind of gave permission to other entrepreneurial companies to sell to large conglomerates, and that's what began to happen. One sold, then another sold, then another sold, and so that began the domino effect. Also in the 90s, we were introduced to something called Diversion. Products started popping up in the stores, in the grocery stores. And we said, oh my God, what's going to happen? And they said, no, that can't be. Some unscrupulous hairdresser is taking and buying extra product, putting it in a box, taking it down to Target and selling it, which we bought that. We believed that story. And, anybody who has any common sense knows that that's not the way that's done. First of all, those large companies like Target and grocery stores, wherever they are, they don't buy anything without a PO, purchase order. So they had to be buying from someone who would supply them with a purchase order. I don't know many hairdressers that will, develop a purchase order if they take a box of shampoo down and sell it to the store. I mean, when you think back and you look back on it now, it was kind of a ridiculous story, but we believed it. I mean, they even paraded people out on stage at their educational events saying, these are the sheriffs that are working on this. And they started coating the bottom of their bottles and all of those kinds of things. Now, everyone's going to say, well, we didn't do that, or we had no part in that. And they may not have, but here's what I do know, is that there were distributors that had a great connection with the manufacturer, and distributors at that time too started getting what we call allocation. So they were required to sell X amount of dollars. If they didn't sell that amount of money in a 12-month period, then what would happen is that the manufacturer had the option to pull their contract. And so then there were distributors who would start to sell it out. They would sell it, maybe out of the country somewhere. And of course, it would find its way back in. So there were also companies who had actually departments directly designed for direct sales. Because one of the things that we know, now that we look back on that, is that if you want to have your product on an end cap and Target, they rent those areas out. They rent that shelving out to manufacturers. And so we started to see some chinks in the armor, but we still wanted to believe it was okay. Some held strong. They said, no, we'll never turn our back on the professional hairdresser. After all, you're the ones who helped us build our company. And I want you to remember that, okay? They built their company on the hairdresser. If the hairdresser had not endorsed their product and told the consumer how wonderful the product was, their product would have probably not reached the sales numbers that they have in the past years. And that's why sometimes, you really kind of step back and go, my God. But here's the thing, for manufacturers, they wanted us to create a revenue stream called retail. And many of us in the industry chose not to do that. Because we didn't do that, their only option at that point, of course, was to go out and create their own revenue stream, whatever it took to sell or move their product. And after all, they had the exposure because We gave it to them. You know, that's why when somebody complains because their client goes to Ulta Beauty and buys a product for less than you can sell it for in your salon, and you go, my God, how can my client do that to me? Think about this. Your client thinks that they're being loyal to you, you know, because you recommended it, they're using it. So in their mind, they're being loyal. You didn't recommend it and say, only buy it from me. Don't buy it from anybody else. And so if they can find it somewhere else and it's at a less price, they do that. Look, you do that. You do that when you go shopping. If I can find something for less than where I normally buy it, would I go buy it? Of course, most all of us would. Most all of us walk around with our phones today and we check prices. So don't be mad at your clients. You know, just understand that for them, they're still being loyal to you. Loyalty, then education in the 1990s, education became a perk. In other words, if you used a product, if you had an exclusive, if you were a brand X salon, you would get X amount of education a year in your salon. And then, of course, most all the major companies in those days opened their own academies. They were opened in New York and Chicago and Miami and Los Angeles and Dallas, all over the country. Because now for serious education, you would go to the academy. And what happened is most of the field education was being given was okay, but it wasn't the serious education. You would have to pay for that when you go to the academy. Now, you know, if you bought X amount of dollars, you would get some discounts. But, you know, some of those things were limited. You know, some of those points, if you will. You know, if you didn't use all the points, you would lose all the points. And there were lots of little complications that were involved in that. So that was what was happening in the 1990s, you know, era of buyouts and diversion. And we were still loyal to some of our product brands, you know, because we're so emotional. You know, if I'm using this brand and you don't use it, it's my tribe, it's my brand. I'm attached to it emotionally. And I just get angry if you tell me that I shouldn't be using it. And the funny thing is, when it comes down to it, it is soap in a bottle. That's what it is. It is soap in a bottle. I know, soap in a fancy bottle. Soap in a fancy bottle with yogurt or quinoa. Soap in a fancy bottle with silk protein, but it's still soap in a bottle. And we get too emotionally hung up on our products. And we try to build all the magic in the product. And that's where our biggest problem has come from, is that we have taught our clients, our guests, that it's the product that does the magic and not us, the salon professional. So in the 1990s, they opened the academies. Manufacturers claimed to be fighting diversion, but still diversion hung on and hung on and hung on. Then we get to the 2000s. I call that the era of continued buyouts, diversion, and certification. Okay? Back in the 90s, the organization, especially in hair color, there were organizations that started to grow, that were put together. One was like International Hair Color Exchange, IHE, which was the forerunner of ABCH, if any of you are members of ABCH. So these were color-only specific organizations who focused on color education. And so one of the things they wanted to do was to certify you. So you could go and take an exam and you could be a certified colorist. And naturally, we wanted to do that because, you know, we wanted to further our education. Some of us wanted to be certified. And the goal was that the consumers would know about certification and they would start coming to certified colorists instead of just going to someone who wasn't certified. And that was the goal with that. Now, some of that never came to fruition simply because there were some missing pieces. Number one, they didn't promote it the way people envisioned they were going to do it. And so as a result of that, you know, the certification was still there, but the promotion for certification, not necessary. However, the manufacturers caught on to this and they said, hey, I don't have to launch a new product. All I have to do is offer certification. And so now everybody began to certify you in their hair color brand or in their product or in their design system. Now think about this. I don't have to make a product. I don't have to generate any initial investment to make a product because I have salon professionals who are willing to pay me $600 to $800 for a plaque. And I take a test which has to do not necessarily with all the principles of hair color, but it has to do with the principles of their hair color, which is a marketing story in many cases. And so you're certified in a marketing story. And we bought that. We did. In fact, I remember sitting in meetings because I am not free from this. I participated. I want you to know that. I remember sitting in meetings and people said, we can't have too high of a passing rate. We have to make sure that not everybody passes. And then they have to come back and take a second exam. Isn't that frightening? Think about that for a while. So, diversion and certification. All the education was facilitated by manufacturers. By then, we as an industry gave it up. We gave it up to manufacturers. That's why people believe that there are golf balls, baseballs, and basketballs in dye molecules. That's why people believe that peroxide opens the cuticle. That's why people believe that when you lighten hair, blue comes out first, red comes out second, and yellow comes out last. How idiotic is that? But yet, we bought it. We bought it because the manufacturers are the ones who taught it. You know, some people taught us that, you know, when you mix your color, as long as it doesn't touch, nothing's happening. Or if you mix your color, it won't activate until you put it on the head. What a bunch of nonsense. And we bought that. We bought that because they were doing the primary education. Some of them gave some great education. Some gave great education. Some gave marketing stories. And that's why the industry is confused today. That's why you go on social media and people go, well, wait, I thought it did this instead of that. Because people are confused because they don't know the truth. You know, one of my biggest problems when I worked for a manufacturer was that I told the truth, and they hated that. And the reason they hated that is because they couldn't compensate for it with a marketing story. So, the beginning of the big box beauty discount stores started in the 2000s. It was crazy because now they were big box beauty discount store, 3 chairs in the back. It wasn't about service anymore. It was now about retail product, and that is what they promote. That's what they push. Distributors were required to meet manufacturers' sales goals. If they didn't, they would be cut off. Certification programs hopefully created more loyalty. All of this was happening in the 2000s, the first 10 years of the 2000s. 2010 arrived, the era of green. So we had done everything as an industry. We had chemically abused the hair. We had talked about all the other things that we use in our products, and then suddenly manufacturers, new brands would pop up, and they would say, well, how can we be different? And they said, well, let's talk about being green. And so now they started attacking ingredient decks. Now the PODs of these brands became very, very selective. You know, don't use that ingredient because that ingredient's bad. Don't use that ingredient because that ingredient is bad. And that's true. Some ingredients are not good in their natural form. But also, when you mix ingredients together, sometimes those caustic or the ingredients that are bad, sometimes they become inert. It's just the way that they mix together. Sometimes they don't. You know, some things can be toxic. Virtually everything can be toxic if you think about it. But now it became an issue of we have to really select. Now people wanted organic hair color. I'm going to tell you right now, okay? Nobody has an organic hair color that is chemical free. You can't do that. You have to have chemical in order to break the chemical bonds in the hair. But yet we still buy that. We still believe you can lighten hair without damaging it. That is nonsense. When you take and you split cysteine, okay? You split cysteine in half, okay? It becomes cysteine. Cysteine creates free amino acid or cysteic acid. Okay, that's just what happens chemically. So, can using additives help? They can help. Can they prevent? No, they can't. Not 100%. So, we started talking about all of these things in 2010. 2010 was a big change because here's what happened. So many brands. It was very hard to find space for your brand. Very hard to differentiate between your brand and another brand. It was very, very difficult. Diversion continued. We still use that term, diversion. About 2010 is when the big box beauty discount store became more powerful than the distributors. What do I mean by that? The big box beauty discount store can buy the product for a bigger discount than a regular distributor can. So some manufacturers went around and purchased their distributors. They said, look, we're your number one brand in your house. So you're going to sell your distributorship to us. If you don't, we'll pull our brand. Does that sound like Al Capone? Does that sound like the Cosa Nostra? But that was the way those deals were done. And so now manufacturers owned their own distributorships. They kept the name separate, so we didn't know, right? That's the whole thing. It's like, as long as the name is the same, we don't think about it. But trust me when I tell you, you know, they have us, we are so loyal to a name. It just slays me, okay? To create larger bottom line, many of the companies began to eliminate a portion of their artist network. Okay, remember, before this, they had large artist networks. I mean, some companies had 800 people that were called an artist. Only about 40 actually really worked, but 800 were called artists. It's funny how we love titles, you know, so the same thing's happening today. You know, it's like, we'll make you an ambassador. You be an ambassador for us. We're not going to pay you anything. We'll give you some free product, but you use your social media influence, to talk about our product. Okay, makes sense? Of course it does if I'm a manufacturer. So here we are in 2018. Here we are in 2018. It's crazy. 7 leaders own 182 beauty product companies. 182 beauty product companies, brands, are owned by only 7 companies. Professional products now are on Amazon, Walmart, big box beauty discount store. You can never sell a liter of shampoo for what the discount store down the street can sell it for. because they can buy it so much less expensive than you can. So it's hard for you to compete. Now, for many of us, we've given up. We go, can't fight them, so I'll just give up. Why would you do that? Retail or professional products is a revenue stream that can pay your rent, pay your electric, pay your gas. Say, well, they're all selling them at the beauty discount store. Well, there's a way to get around that. There's a way to get around that. Manufacturers are open about it today. They don't care. And the reason they don't care is because you've given them the exposure. You've built the brand for them. Imagine if I had, let's just take 1,000 hairdressers that bought my product, and each one of those hairdressers has 100 clients that buy that product. That's 100,000 exposures. That's pretty cool. See, because it is about exposures. You understand that that's how that whole thing started, with products slipping into these stores. After so many exposures, the consumer becomes very aware of the name, the brand, and the logo. And so they're out shopping for something else, and they see the product that they see on your shelves all the time in the store. And they go, oh, wait, Mary uses that on me. So they go take that product and they buy it because I know Mary likes this product. She told me it's good. And I can get it for a lot less than Mary charges, so I'm going to take it. They still feel they're being loyal to you. But the reason the manufacturer was able to get it there is because there was enough exposures. Because after enough exposures, they don't need us anymore. They don't need us anymore. Now they're trying to recruit us. Have you all got that email, that note from Amazon.com? Yeah. It's like, hey, we'll give you a special scanning number. You put it on your door. You know, have your clients scan that when they go on Amazon, and we'll send you a percentage of the sale. Do you really think they want to sell that bottle of shampoo? That's not what they're after. What they're after is your client, because they want their data. They want their data, so now they're going to cross-promote to that client. Any of you are on Amazon, you know that Amazon sends you an email nearly every day. And so Amazon wants that. They don't care if you only have 50 clients, because those 50 clients, is they start sending those emails, they start that constant contact with them, those clients are going to start buying other things on Amazon. If the shampoo is that easy to get a hold of, why won't I buy something else? So trust me when I tell you, when they're recruiting you, it's not because they care about you. They're recruiting you because now they want your data. Many of you want to educate for companies now. You can get some primary education, but for many people, it's never going to be like it was. And the reason it's never going to be like it was is because companies now understand. They now understand that they don't need to invest in an educational network in order to get their product in the market, because the educational network is working with salons who don't really retail anyway. The average retail in salons today is 5 to 8%. Why would they waste their money hiring educators to talk about their product in the salon when they can get the exposure on Amazon that they've already gotten over this period of years? And so the consumer knows their name. So what can you do? First of all, do business only with those who support you. Do you know there are many niche companies, small manufacturers, who make great shampoo and conditioner, who make great hair color, and who at this point continually support salon professionals only. They do not retail their product. They don't sell their product through distributorships. They don't sell their product online. They sell it through the salon professionals. Those are the people you should do business with. Those are the people that would support you. Look, if you don't want to do business with them, then get your own brand. It's going to take an investment on your part. But in the long run, having your own brand, you'll at least have control over it. We have to take our business back. We're not doing that. Did you know that there are manufacturers today, the large manufacturers, that have their artists going into malls, teaching the consumers how to do their hair with their products? They don't need us. They have people who are doing that. So it's time for you to fight back. Oh, but I can't give up my Orbe. The bottles are so cool. Yeah, they are. They certainly are. But if they can buy the same thing on Amazon, what you're doing is you're pushing that sale there. And for the minute, when you think your clients aren't going to do that, I promise you there are some who will. And some of you have already seen that happen. Make your loyalty conditional. Mine is. What does that mean? That means that if the minute I find that a manufacturer that I do business with, my business partner, that what they told me is not true and they're not holding up to their end of the bargain, I'm done doing business with them and I'll move on, because there are other products in the marketplace. Make your loyalty conditional. What have you done for me lately? Education. Much of the education is being done today. There's some that's really good. There's a lot that's not. Why is that? Well, first of all, education is a skill set. In order to be a good trainer or a good facilitator of information, you have to be trained. It's not something you're born with. But what manufacturers do is they're hiring the Insta-famous people on Instagram, the ones with the biggest followings. They don't want you. They want your following. They're hiring them to come and work in a show, work on platform. The facilitation skills are poor. The information is not good, not always. Some is good, I'm sure. Okay? But they're not interested in that. Well, the reason is you are the bait. You are the bait. Okay, so if you want to take that one shot, get up there and do that one shot. Or if they put you up on stage and they put you with one of their seasoned trainers who's going to deliver the information and you're just going to do your skill set, remember what they're looking for are your people who are in your following today. That's what manufacturers are looking for. And today, if you want to be an educator for a manufacturer, if you don't have a large social media following, some of them don't even want to talk to you. Isn't that crazy? It is. Certainly is. So look, time to take our industry back. If we don't do that, we're going to lose everything. I don't want to be a fatalist. We will evolve. We will survive this. But I'm not sure what it's going to look like once we come out the other side. We can only do it together. If you really care about the business, if this is really your career, and if you really want to make it a place where you can generate income and where you don't have to struggle. I did a class the other day, and I talked about how, with the right average ticket price on a $75 ticket price, if you have the right amount of clients, you can make $310,000, around a little over $300,000 a year. If you don't have the right amount of clients and you have less, I showed how to make $250,000, all of that on a $75 ticket. Now, some of you do a balayage, you take 5 hours, but you do a balayage and you charge $400 or $500 for it. That's great. Okay, and that's good if you can consistently do that. But the fact is, most hairdressers can't and do not today. So you need to secure your future now. And to me, retail, as they call it, that take-home product, it serves two purposes. One, it creates that added revenue stream for me. Secondly, it creates a hook for that client. In other words, every time they're in that shower, every time they're shampooing their hair or spraying their hair, or putting gel in their hair, they're thinking of me. We need to take our business back because it's not ours anymore. It's owned by the manufacturers. And that's great. They've done a great job. I participated in that. I spent 26 years making loyal robots. And that's great, and I don't regret that at all, because I know what the intent was originally when we began. Okay. The plan changed after 1993. However, I know what the plan was. And so I want you to do the best. I want you to have success. And it's been an interesting journey. So when somebody thinks they know it all, trust me, if you haven't lived through what I've lived through, you haven't seen all this stuff happen. So, I've seen it go up, I've seen it go down, I've seen it come back up. My goal is that we will grab a hold of it now, especially because now government is starting to deregulate our business. And eventually, it's going to change everything in this industry. And we can't do it alone, so I need you to help me do it. So do it today, will you? Hopefully you found this beneficial. If you have, share it with your friends. And as I always say, come visit us at Guru Village, www.guruvillage.net. We are a professional empowerment company. Our job is to help you become more successful and discover your genius. As I always say, learn it, live it, own it. And as I always say, from my heart to yours, I'm Captain Color. I'm out. Have a great day.